Good morning, this is Nicole Ringgold. In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make a sliding clasp attached to leather. In the last tutorial, I showed you how to attach the components, including a bezel, to the leather. But today we're just going to focus on the sliding closure. This leather cuff is 1.5 inches wide. You'll need 22 gauge sheet, and if you have shears, or you might just have to use a saw, you'll also cut it to a 1.5 inch width. You will use these to wrap around both ends of your leather cuff, so you're going to want to cut or saw 3/4 of an inch or more. You will also need sterling silver tubing. Here are the dimensions that I get from Rio Grande. This too needs to be 1.5 inches wide. I'm going to use this nifty tie-quad soldering platform to add silver dust to my ends. To do so, I take the silver sheet, the 22 gauge sheet, and then I dip it in water. I save all of the silver dust from the carving that I do, and I use that like fairy dust. So I'm taking my wet silver sheet, and then I'm going to sprinkle a thin layer of silver dust on top. You don't want that layer to be too thick. You're fusing this, so if it's too thick, you'll have much more difficulty fusing. Place it on your soldering stand, heat from below, and you'll see the color transform from silver to yellow to like a copper color to black. And once it's black, then you can move your torch so that you're working from above. Watch for the silver dust to slump into the sheet. Then I use cutoff wheels, and here is the information, again from Rio Grande. That's how my silver dust turned out. And then on the back side, draw a line down the center using a Sharpie. I use the cutoff wheel in my flex shaft to score down that center line. And if you prefer, you can use a triangular shaped file. It would do the same thing. It just takes a lot longer. Either way, score approximately 2/3 of the way through your sheet. Either way, you'll know when you're done when you can take your fingers or 2 pair of pliers and very gently bend the silver toward the score line. It should be easy to bend, not forced. Anneal both ends, as well as the tubing. I use a third hand to hold the scored piece upside down and then situate the tubing so that it's right on the fold. Flux, and then here I'm using medium solder just for the color match, but you can use any kind of solder since this is the only solder joint on this end. And I'm going to put the solder on the back side and then heat on the front side to draw it through. Then cut 2 strips of 1/8 inch 22 gauge sheet. You'll solder them together like this to create a T. Flux, and then use hard solder. I'm putting the solder on the front side, and then I'm going to heat the back side to draw the solder through. And then, similar to the other side with the tubing, you'll take that T and leave it on your platform. Take the other scored, folded side, place it in your third hand, make sure that they're nice and flush, and now here you can use either medium or easy solder to solder the 2 components together. Then you'll pickle, you'll quench, and then I take the same cutoff wheel and then I cut a line down the center of the tubing. The piece may get hot when you're cutting it, so you might want to hold it with pliers. I also like to steady it by placing it down on my workbench. You're not going to cut a line all the way through from one side to the other. You're going to leave a tiny segment still connected on one end. That segment that you leave connected should be on the left side. The goal is for the 22 gauge sheet, the T, to fit into that gap that you are cutting. And then the T, the right side will fall short. It will not go all the way to the end of the sheet. The idea is that they slip together, and that end right there that's still attached will act as a stopper when you slide the T into place. It will also ensure that the tubing does not collapse over time with wear and tear. So this is how it works. It slides into place. There's the stopper. Perhaps showing you a cross section will help you understand how it fits together. I decided to put mine in liver of sulfur, so I did that before attaching it to the leather. Use a rawhide or nylon mallet to hit it in place over the leather. I set the folding closure off of my workbench so that when I'm hammering it in place, I'm not hammering the tubing and squishing it. From here, you'll take a drill bit, a twist drill, that fits a 16 gauge wire, and you will drill through both layers of the metal and through the leather. 2 holes, one on either side, should be enough. To make rivets, I use the number 406 frets riveting hammer. I use half hard, round, 16 gauge sterling silver wire. Place the wire in a vise so that it barely sticks above the lip of the vise. Use the straight edge to create a cross that splays the wire, and then you're going to turn it over and hammer it sort of in a round circular formation until it splays. You do not want your wire to stick up too high above the vise because otherwise it will bend. This hammer is super lightweight, so you do need to put a little bit of oomph, a little bit of force in there. But this is what it looks like when you pull it out. Then you'll put the 16 gauge pins, nail heads that you created, through the holes, all the way through the metal, leather, metal, on both sides. And then you'll turn your leather over on a work surface, like a steel block or your anvil, snip, and then you're gonna repeat the steps on this side. I usually hammer across on one and then the other before hammering them flush. This keeps the end cap from slipping off as you're trying to secure the rivets. I turn my piece over so that I can be sure that they're flush on both sides. From here, I use a fiber wheel or a sunburst radial disc to polish up the ends. And that should do it. As always, feel free to comment or ask questions in the comment sections below. And I'd love to hear from you. If you try this out, let me know how it goes. Thank you.